We've got NFL football today, and that means you've got some last-minute lineup decisions to make. In this video, I'm going to be helping you out with doing that by giving you my top 30 wide receiver rankings and tiers for week 1 action here at the wide receiver position, and obviously breaking down the situations that I see unfolding here and obviously taking place for week 1. So if you're new around here, make sure to drop down, click that subscribe button, and turn the bell on so you never miss an episode. This is the 8th long YouTube video I've recorded for week 1 fantasy advice, and I try to respond to as many of your guys' fantasy questions as well and be a super interactive presence for you all on YouTube. So make sure to take advantage of that. We've also got YouTube short content and other social media accounts and links in the description of today's video to give you an edge for this season. Check all that out. Let's not waste any time. Let's dive into our top receivers for this week's action. All right, you guys, so I don't want today's video to seem rushed, but I also don't want to make you guys sit through an hour-long video if it doesn't have to be that. I just finished recording the running back segment of this episode, and I tried to be efficient, and things still went a little bit longer than I intended for them to, so I'm going to try and keep things even more brief in this video. I still think I provide some pretty good information, though, and hopefully I'm helping you guys out with your leagues this week. So let's get things kicked off and started here right away with our elite wide receiver 1 tier. These are going to be the best guys. Obviously, the players that you most want in your lineups for the week. If you're looking for rankings associated with these players, obviously, as the thumbnail and title of the video suggest, simply look left to right. There may be a discrepancy where I'm looking down at my note sheet for where to drag these players. I might get something wrong here, but for the most part, left to right is going to be the corresponding rankings for these players. So yes, this is the first one. This is correct. I have Ja'Marr Chase personally as my wide receiver 1 for this week. I think the way that this works best is if I just fill out the whole tier, and then we can break down the situation very quickly. Cooper Kupp is my number 2 wide receiver for the week. Davante Adams is coming in at our number 3 position for this week's matchup, and then Justin Jefferson rounds out the top tier. So very quickly here, Ja'Marr Chase, someone who I think has very, very good upside this week, as long as Joe Burrow obviously has great upside as Ja'Marr Chase. But having Joe Burrow against this Pittsburgh defense, as long as he's protected, I think the downfield passing attack is there for Cincinnati. I think he's able to beat every corner on this Steelers roster, and we saw Ja'Marr have some very nice games in this situation a season ago. If you want to argue me and put Cooper Kupp over him here, no problem with that. This week, the Bills don't have Tre'Davious White, and we know that Cooper Kupp is a Triple Crown winner. So you're getting a situation in LA here on opening Thursday Night Football with a very, very strong case that the Triple Crown winner could come out and have the best week 1 of any fantasy wide receiver. I've got him as a close second here in week 1. Davante Adams has himself a very nice matchup against the Los Angeles Chargers. Now you might be thinking, what, Gavin? Come on. They signed J.C. Jackson in free agency. They've got themselves a shutdown corner. He's going to shout out Davante Adams. Well, there's a report out. Sounds like he's not playing this week. So you're going to potentially get a situation here. Week 1, Davante Adams and Derek Carr, that chemistry building. And, we saw things with Cooper Kupp take off immediately last season. Davante and Derek Carr, best friends from college here, getting the opportunity to finally put that chemistry to work on an NFL field without the Chargers' top defensive back and corner in coverage. So really liking that matchup. I apologize. I do not have a Davante Adams headshot in a Raiders uniform. I'll take care of that as soon as I turn off the camera today. And then Justin Jefferson here is our 4th receiver. Taking on the Packers, very tough and stingy secondary matchup for Jefferson here. He's still going to make plays. He's still going to be fine, but I think it does limit his ceiling somewhat this week. Now let's move into the strong wide receiver 1 tier. So these are names I don't necessarily expect to be entirely elite, but I do expect them to have very, very solid top 12 finishes. That's basically my assessment of a wide receiver 1 this week is a top 12 player. Yes, there is the potential for some spillover and more than 12 guys to make the top 3 tiers here of the fringe RB1 or wide receiver 1 territories, but we'll get to that as we go along here. So again, moving along to the strong wide receiver 1's tier, let's toss CeeDee Lamb up on the board. Let's toss up Mike Evans. If you guys want me to just put these players up here before I start the video as well, you can let me know in the comment section, and I can definitely do that, and then you can look at the names and the players and the faces for the whole video while I just break them down tier by tier. But next up, we're putting up Mike Evans. After that, in between that, we do have Deebo Samuel, can't forget about him, and then Stephon Diggs to round out this grouping for the week. Where's Stephon? There he is. So essentially here, with this group, CeeDee Lamb, I'm expecting to have a very, very large influx of targets and opportunities in Dallas this year. Obviously, week one, no Michael Gallup. You've got yourself a situation where running the football is going to be very hard to do against the Buccaneers. I think CeeDee is very good after the catch, and they are going to utilize him a ton this season. Deebo Samuel against Chicago. It's a very favorable matchup. The 49ers are 7.5-point favorites. He's going to have to get his damage done early. He's going to have to catch the football, rack up some points in probably the first 3 quarters of this contest because I'm expecting a large margin of victory for San Francisco. However, we still got him in a very high class here for the wide receiver position. Mike Evans on the other side of the Dallas Cowboys matchup for this week. You're probably working against Trayvon Diggs the majority of this game, a guy who allowed 1,000 yards last season to opposing receivers. Big plays can be had on him. He'll get interceptions, but I think that especially with, still some uncertainty about Chris Godwin's availability, Mike Evans is a very, very solid option here. And then finally, Stephon Diggs is the last player in this tier. He could have a quieter game than we're accustomed to seeing. Jalen Ramsey has done a very, very good job. He hasn't been able to always hold him out of the end zone or prevent him from scoring, but Diggs is someone who, in this matchup, again, potentially being shadowed by Jalen Ramsey. He didn't actually do that as much last year, but still could limit him a little bit, could cap that ceiling. I still expect him to be a very, very strong lineup play, though. Into the fringe wide receiver ones category here, let's find T. Higgins to throw up there on the board. Let's also find Tyreek Hill and Michael Pittman. I just added the new Tyreek Hill photo. We've got 2 Tyreeks. As of right now, I haven't figured out how to delete old photos, so I apologize for that. I added them in here and then realized my mistake. And we've also got Keenan Allen in this category as well. T. Higgins, it's a similar outlook as Jamar Chase. We're actually very balanced, 4 players in each of our first 3 tiers, making that top 12 number perfect here. But T. Higgins against Pittsburgh, big plays can be had. He's a phenomenal frame, an athlete. He can make big plays in the red zone, score touchdowns, all that stuff. We know what T. Higgins represents. He's got a great quarterback, the number 1 most accurate deep ball passer in the league last season, best passing quarterback under pressure a season ago. He's got everything working for him besides the fact that he might be like the 1B option in this offense in the receiving game. Moving on to Tyreek Hill at the number 10 position. We've also got ourselves a situation here where we've got a new offense. You've got the Miami Dolphins, and you've got this basically a situation. We'll just call it a situation. I was going to call it a narrative where you've got Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill, and you've got to figure out for fantasy how things are going to work out here. My expectation with how much money and how many draft picks the Dolphins gave up, Tyreek Hill is going to be the top guy for this season. He seems to be the guy that's always talking on behalf of the Dolphins. So he seems like a team leader to me. He seems like the guy that's going to be leading the charge for this receiving game. However, this week 1 matchup is really interesting. Typically, in years past, they're playing the Patriots this week, for those of you who didn't know. What you'll see from Bill Belichick is he'll put his number 1 shutdown corner on the opposing receiver's number 1 receiver, and then he will proceed to double the opponent's number 2 receiver. You don't really have a shutdown lockup number 1 corner anymore. J.C. Jackson's out of the door. Stephon Gilmore's out of the door. What do you do now? So I'm really interested to see not only the approach from New England defensively, but also the approach offensively from the Miami Dolphins. There's a lot of uncertainty here for me this week, so I've got him as a fringe wide receiver 1, because to be honest, there's a lot of different things that could happen. Michael Pittman for the Indianapolis Colts, big favorites, 9.5 point favorites against the Houston Texans this week, has an opportunity to take a big step forward this season with Matt Ryan under center. He can become a lot more consistent. He could get a lot more valuable downfield opportunities that are quality looks and actually drop into his breadbasket, as opposed to just being sailed up somewhere in the region of his head and hoping to God that he catches Carson Wentz's flying duck. So Pittman for me this week, I think, has an advantageous matchup. We'll see how long that connection takes to break out here, but I do expect a nice season from him. And then Keenan Allen taking on the Raiders. He's just that consistency king, the guy that's getting a high volume of passes, double-digit targets on a frequent basis here, and is seemingly bust-proof in most scenarios. So we'll take him in that fringe wide receiver 1 category. If other receivers aren't booming, he probably has a top 12 finish. If everyone else is going off, he probably finishes as a high-end wide receiver 2 for the week. Now into those elite wide receiver 2s here. Let's start out with his teammate, Mike Williams, the total opposite of Keenan Allen. He's the guy that fluctuates, has larger ebbs and flows. He's either all in, totally crushing, totally dominating your week for you, or he's, leaving you scratching your head, wondering what the heck happened, and leaving a sour taste in your mouth. Now, this is a matchup we saw him do very well in last season. He did, obviously go cuckoo bananas in I think it was about 45% of his games. It was one fewer than 500. So whatever that percentage is. But, he's either totally going AWOL or he is, like I said, flopping on his face. You never know what's going to hit. Mike Williams could go out there and win your week, or like I said, he could totally leave you devastated. It's just going to be how things play out here in week one. The Raiders the Raiders secondary does not scare me, so I think he has the opportunity to go out there and ball out. But we'll see what happens. It's going to depend on where Justin Herbert and how many targets are allocated around that football field. Hollywood Brown, another name I'm super excited about here for this week. I'm starting him almost every single week here, weeks 1 through 6, without DeAndre Hopkins on the field. And for what's a potential shootout here in week 1 against Kansas City, give me some Hollywood Brown. I think him and Kyler Murray. Kyler, another one of those really great deep passing quarterbacks, have a phenomenal connection here and light up for a large ceiling number. If he's your wide receiver 3 or flex option this week, you're in business with Hollywood Brown in the lineup. DJ Moore is another guy. We're actually, not doing things by the book here. I said I was going to put players up all in one cluster and then talk through them. We totally just randomly got off track here and are doing the opposite. I'll toss DJ Moore and Courtland Sutton up here into the elite wide receiver 2 category. Another group that, let me make sure here, yes, has 4 names in it, so very, very, very balanced to start off today's video. DJ Moore, for me, someone who doesn't have a super high ceiling, in my opinion, this week. Denzel Ward's a very respectable corner on the other side of the field. However, I'm expecting a large volume of passes headed DJ Moore's direction. He had a 28.7% target share a season ago, if I remember that correctly, 162 targets. The issue's been touchdown production. His season high is 4 throughout his career, so he's had 3 seasons, actually, of 4 receiving touchdowns. Hopefully he can break that threshold this year. If not, he'll be a very, very strong floor PPR play. That ceiling, though, could potentially get tapped into with Baker Mayfield this year. We'll see what ends up happening. I'm not the biggest Baker Mayfield guy, but I do think it is a better situation slightly than what we've had with Sam Darnold, PJ Walker, Teddy Bridgewater, all the above. So fingers crossed on DJ Moore for this season. And then Courtland Sutton here. Unfortunately, being the large Jerry Jeudy guy that I am just really hoping, really hoping that Jerry Jeudy breaks out this week. I would love nothing more than to be proven wrong here with my rankings assessment, having Jerry Jeudy ranked below Courtland Sutton. But all the reports we're hearing are Courtland Sutton this, Courtland Sutton that, Courtland Sutton's mom, Courtland Sutton's brother, Courtland Sutton in the end zone, Courtland Sutton in your fantasy lineups. It's starting to piss me off. So, I'm hoping I'm right on Jerry Jeudy. I'm really, really hoping. I think he's the better player. I think he's the alpha in games they played together last season. Jerry Jeudy was getting more targets, had more yards, had more production. But apparently Russell Wilson, Mr. Unlimited, is limiting my fantasy ceiling this year. So, like I said, little side storyline here for week 1 action to see how pissed I get on Monday night. But Courtland Sutton, big body, big frame, easy matchup. Not really any shutdown corners there. I saw this post on Instagram the other day, and it was like standout performers from the 2022 NFL preseason, and it was like something along the lines of Kobe Bryant, the guy for the Seahawks, was making a big impression. And then I was like, oh, what was the impression he was making? And I remember back to a highlight from watching George Pickens absolutely bitch him and just throw him on the ground on a run play. So I don't think, a big body like Courtland Sutton, he's going to be knocking people around, hopefully scoring some fantasy points, scoring some touchdowns. And, at the end of the day, if Russell Wilson's producing, I've got him in a lot of fantasy leagues, so I'll be fine with that. Moving on to this, wait. Those were the elite wide receiver 2s. Let's move on now to the strong wide receiver 2s category, and we're kicking things off with A.J. Brown. I will put them all up on the screen here. I know for a fact. I messed this up in the last video. I have to flip the page here. We have more names on this than I had room for on my notes section. We've also got Deontay Johnson. I'm tossing Terry McLaurin up there as well. Give me 2 seconds here. I got to flip the page of my notebook over. Allen Robinson, another name that I've also got in this tier for this week. And then Gabe Davis will round us out. So A.J. Brown's the guy that I had on my trade away list for this week. Not super bullish on him this season. Not super confident in Jalen Hurts as a passer. Week 1, though, I like the matchup. Obviously, his ceiling is always sky high, but they're going to need to ask him to be uber efficient again this year. Obviously, with the lacking, you're not getting 150 targets out of A.J. Brown this year. That's just not going to happen. Deontay Johnson, could actually fall out of this group this week. I think he is still a strong play because I still think he is the established number one receiver for this offense. However, you never know. You got a quarterback change, and it's going to come down to preference here. Just like I think that Jerry Jeudy is the best receiver in Denver's offense. It doesn't matter what I think. It matters what the quarterback thinks. And this week, that's Mitchell Trubisky. So who does Mitch like the best? I don't know. I couldn't tell you. We'll find out this week. Obviously, there's preseason numbers with their, obviously, passing distribution, but take it for what it's worth. I think that Deontay Johnson will be fine this year. There should be some consistency drop-off, though, because I'm assuming they're not going to just shovel him the ball at the line of scrimmage again this season because they actually have quarterbacks who are not elite yet, but can throw the football more than 5 to 7 yards downfield. So, Terry McLaurin, moving on here, a guy who I actually think I may have underrated here for week one. Carson Wentz, for me, can definitely sling the ball downfield, and this is a matchup where the cornerback room doesn't scare me a ton. I think Terry could be a boom option this week. Of course, he's also a bust option as well. That's just how things go here with the Washington Commanders offense and throughout Terry McLaurin's career as a Washington football player. So we'll see what happens. Allen Robinson, a player I love this week. He made the must-start list for me. Doesn't have the same ceiling as a guy like a Terry McLaurin does. However, I think the floor is awesome this week, like I talked about with Cooper Kupp. No Trey White, so they're going to have to slide each of their corners up a level of responsibility. And what that means is Allen Robinson, who I see as a number one wide receiver for a lot of teams in this league, actually, working as the number two Rams receiver, is going to be a number one level player working against a number three level player, because if they're directing the attention of that number two guy, now I'm not saying they're going to shadow every single play because those guys probably aren't capable of doing that, but in theory, he should be working against third-tier coverage from the Bills secondary, and it should be a very, very advantageous matchup. Gabe Davis rounds out this position room, another Thursday night player. Of course, Jalen Ramsey can't guard both Stephon Diggs and Gabe Davis. I expect him, if he shadows, to spend his time on Stephon Diggs, and I expect a couple of deep shots or end zone passes headed number 13's direction. Gabe Davis's ceiling this week is very, very good. I would take advantage of it and put him in a flex or wide receiver 2 spot for sure. So that leaves us into our second to last tier here, where we're going to start things off with Jalen Waddle. Then we're going to put my boy Jerry Jeudy up here. After my homie Jerry Jeudy, we're going to put up Michael Thomas. And after Michael Thomas, we're going to toss up Darnell Mooney. Where is the moon baller? There he is. All right, so Jalen Waddle, like we talked about earlier, I'm sorry, I'll scroll back up here, is a player. I just want to make sure I didn't miss anybody. Oh, we're good. So Jalen Waddle, like I said, there's that interesting dynamic with the Patriots. Are they going to double Hill? Are they going to double Waddle? Are they going to designate one guy to cover either of these options? What are they going to do? We don't really know. I think the Dolphins win this game. I'm not sure by how much. I just think it's going to be a meltdown and disaster by the Pats offense. So it's a lot of uncertainty for me. I think that last season Jalen Waddle was awesome, but I'm not so sure he lives up to the wide receiver 18 draft capital investment you had to make into him this year. So it's a guessing game. I'm not going to try and tell you what's going to happen here. I've just got him as a fringe wide receiver too, because I think he's got a good ceiling, but I think his floor is pretty shaky. Jerry Jeudy, same thing. I mean, if he doesn't get as many passes as I think, his ceiling probably, his floor probably isn't as high as I was expecting it to be. I think that he should lead this team in targets. I think he is the most talented and well-rounded player in a very talented pass-catching core for Denver here, but it depends where Russ goes with the football. So I think Jerry can have an excellent game. We'll see if that's the case here. Of course, in this matchup, his ceiling is very, very high. We'll see what ends up happening. Michael Thomas here against Atlanta. I wanted to put him higher, but I still gave him somewhat of a benefit of the doubt. We haven't seen Michael Thomas legitimately play football in almost 2 years. I mean, we saw him here and there in the 2020 season. We didn't see him at all last year. I think he can do positive things in this matchup. I think he'll have a good season. I think he could be a guy we think of similarly to a Keenan Allen at the end of this year, or maybe a Deontay Johnson, just in terms of having high PPR floor value. But how high is the ceiling going to be? How is he going to match with Jameis Winston? A.J. Terrell for the Atlanta Falcons is also a very good coverage corner. There's a lot of uncertain things there as well. So for me, that's why he's a fringe wide receiver 2. His ceiling is far higher than this fringe wide receiver 2 evaluation here. But at the end of the day, if he's not the same guy, that makes him have that fringe wide receiver 2 status because, of course, the floor is far lower. now potentially than it was in years previous. And then Darnell Mooney, of course, has a big ceiling. He is the lone star in a very dimly lit Chicago Bears offense. He's going to be getting a lot of passing opportunities heading his direction. I'm hoping for some minimal and marginal improvement from Justin Fields as a passer. Anything will go a long way here. It was such a disaster last season. Offensive line protection is going to have to be okay as well to give him enough time to get rid of the football. But that's the main concern for me. Can they hold up? Can they withstand a pass rush from Nick Bosa and other guys up the middle and coming off the edge? It could get scary. The Bears could get blown out in this game. But like last season, 140 targets went Darnell Mooney's direction. We could see similar elite levels of volume at play this week. Next up, let's move to our final tier here. I think I'm making pretty good time. We'll see. A surprise for you guys, I actually tossed in 2 extra names today. No, not all the guys in the bottom bar are going to be in today's episode. I messed up. Yes, I made a mistake. The rookies were still in my file of NFL wide receiver headshots, so we don't even have updated headshots for them. Spoiler alert, though, none of them are going to be in this video. So let's toss everyone else out there. And just like Tyreek Hill has 2 headshots, so does A.J. Brown, because I still had his Titans one in there. It's all fine and good. So next up, wide receiver 3 territory. Let's toss up Chris Godwin. Let's toss up Elijah Moore. Let's toss up Rashad Bateman. Let's toss up DK Metcalf. Let's toss up Amari Cooper. And let's toss up my man, Amon-Ra St. Brown. Oh, and Juju. Where did we miss Juju? There he goes. All right. That should be everyone. Yes, it is. So, a larger group. Again, we went to 32 names today, not 30. I do want to have one disclaimer before I dive into this tier, is that just because these guys are wide receiver 3s does not mean I don't like them this week. Now, there are some guys in here that I don't like. Very boom-bust options, like a Amari Cooper, for example, who made my must-sit list this week. However, there's other names in this grouping that I absolutely love. I still love Chris Godwin, Elijah Moore, Rashad Bateman, and Amon-Ra St. Brown for this week, even Juju Smith-Schuster. These are very, very high-quality flex plays. And at the end of the day, if you're playing any of them, even DK or Amari, who I think are a lot more boom-bust than the other options, they can still have legitimate lineup value as well. I personally don't want to start Amari Cooper this week because of the fact, I talked about this in our must-sit episode, is I don't trust Jacoby Brissett in game number 1, Amari Cooper playing on the road. I don't know how much volume he's going to get. He's such a different player from what Jalen Waddle is and what we saw Brissett produce for Waddle last season, that there's just really no draw for me to be able to compare apples to oranges here. I just need to see it with my own 2 eyes. It's going to be hard for me to project that, and so I'm very low on Amari Cooper early on this season. As such, Geno Smith, DK Metcalf, it's not my favorite, guys. I've said that in other videos this week. What DK does have going for him is a 6'4", 220-pound frame, so he can go up there and score touchdowns, win contested balls downfield, and potentially get loose in the secondary and maybe make a big play downfield. We'll see. It's a stingy Denver secondary. They've got guys like Justin Simmons roaming over the top of the defense. Pat Surtain may spend some time shadowing around DK. Otherwise, he'll just sit on his side of the field, and it'll all be about alignment. But 2 things that I think could go very, very wrong there. Rashad Bateman, another name that I've had a slight coming back on here for this week. I'm not going to totally retract my must-start status for him, but I would say I'm less bullish on him now Thursday morning than I was on him on Monday morning. I love the matchup. I think that they're going to have a cakewalk against the Jets this week. However, with that comes the fact that Rashad still has not had a legitimate fantasy breakout. It is a bit jumpy of me, I'll say, to have him as a week 1 breakout. That's just something that doesn't always happen. No, he's not a rookie, so it's not impossible. He is officially the wide receiver 1 in this offense, so again, it very well could happen. But I've toned my expectations down for him slightly this week. Likewise, I have scaled up my expectations for Elijah Moore. Joe Flacco is now the official starter for this team, and I think the slot receiver has the best security blanket level status for this offense. We've seen Flacco and Moore actually produce together last season at a fairly decent level. It was Flacco just coming in late in the game and throwing a quick few passes to Moore for a touchdown. But, slot receivers are awesome for getting off the ball very quickly, scoring points in the space, and all that great stuff. So if they're getting blown out and have a heavy passing volume offensive script and the offensive line can't protect Flacco from the Ravens pass rush, Elijah Moore could have himself a really, really nice game. Also, I love me some Amon-Ra St. Brown this week. Again, not bashing on these guys in the wide receiver 3 territory. They can produce some really relevant stuff to your lineups. I think as a PPR play, I wanted to put Amon-Ra St. Brown actually a lot higher on this list, but I just didn't know where to factor him in. I mean, Is he a fringe wide receiver 2? You can make the case he could be all the way up there in the strong wide receiver 2 category. He could be fed the ball underneath this week and have a massive game. So for me, I'll be the first to tell you, I want to put him up there higher. I didn't want to skew the numbers too much here. I didn't want to totally go out on a limb and say that he was going to be in a strong or an elite wide receiver 2 candidate for this week. I think he'll do very well in PPR, though. I think he has a very high floor because we got no Jameson Williams early on in the season, and we saw what he did down the stretch of last year. Who else we got to talk about here? Chris Godwin. And then we'll finish off today's video with Juju Smith-Schuster. For me, Chris Godwin is someone that I absolutely love with having, the potential for him to play. We don't know if he will. Like I said earlier, he could be ruled out by the time this video comes live to you on Thursday morning. I think that Chris Godwin is definitely someone who has the best skill set for this Dallas Cowboys matchup here. Like I talked about, pass rush is going to be in Brady's face. They're going to need to get that ball out in space very quickly, and Chris Godwin has the best release package off the line to make that happen, whereas Mike Evans is more of a jump ball, possession wide receiver, or a big red zone target. So all things to think about there. And then finally, Juju Smith-Schuster looks like the best option to be Kansas City's #1 wide receiver week 1. That in of itself is an awesome opportunity. Who knows how much work that'll mean he gets in week 1. Who knows how much will go to Travis Kelce, the running back, Sky Moore. You've got so many moving pieces here in Kansas City. It's another one of those things where I would love to put him in the strong wide receivers 2 category. I think come the end of the season, I'll like him a lot here. But for week 1, with so many moving parts and uncertainties, he is a flex player for me first. If he fits in your lineup there, great. If not, wait a week here and see what happens in week 2. So there you guys have it. Thank you so much for watching. Of course, check out the links in the description of today's video. Check out our social media platforms. Check out sizzlefantasy.com for more in-depth analysis from me this year. Check out everything. Our Twitter accounts, TikTok, social medias, YouTube, shorts, videos that we've been posting here. Twitter. I think I already said Twitter. But check it all out. We've got a lot of different outlets of stuff coming out in your way this season and a bunch of different ways for you to consume awesome fantasy football content. So thank you so much, you guys. Be sure to let me know your questions, your last-minute questions, down in the comment section below, and I'll see you guys there. Peace out.